Hello, good afternoon to everybody. As you know, my name is Arhan. I am the CEO and the financial professionals from ABN Finsights Academy. This program has been recorded as a part of learning and development program named as Expert Talk program. And today we have a interesting topic. We need to talk about the executive coaching and the disruption in the economy to see how the coaching can be very helpful for the financial community. And today we have a very wonderful and amazing guest. She's also from the financial background. She's FCA from ICEW. She's also an executive coach and working as a director and non-executive solutions in Australia. Her name is Sue Ruzan. So welcome to the show, Susan.
Hi, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yep, it's we are very privileged and we are very honored that you join our session. So it's a very tough time for especially for the CFAs and the financial leadership team. So we are thinking to run the session for those people who would like to understand how executive coaching can be very helpful in today's environment. Uh, so before we jump to the topic and the session, we would like you to please give us your background for our audience. Okay, so they can correlate and they can understand your issues, your background, and they can correlate for their funding. Over to you, sir.
Great, thanks. Yeah, so I started out my career so I'm from the UK originally, and I started out my career with one of the big accountancy firms in London, where I studied and became a CA. And I have to say, through that process, I was never really enamored of being a CA at that time in professional practice, certainly. But what I did see that as being was a gateway, I suppose, into actually working in business, having a much broader understanding of how businesses operate, and really, seeing new possibilities for what I could do in my career in the future. So although I knew financial or professional services and that professional practice wasn't the place for me, after I qualified as a CA in London, I moved out to Australia. And once I settled into Australia, I took roles within small to medium-sized businesses, leading finance teams. And that gave me an opportunity to be much more involved in the business and to really be working with other leaders within the business on strategy and value adding and how we grow, build, maintain a business. And in those roles, I then worked through, they were privately held businesses initially. I worked through an IPO with a recruitment practice, an Australian-based national practice at the time. So I was getting huge amounts of experience there, building a team, and then was working in that listed environment for quite a lot of years. And during that time, I also would say that I had real ups and downs, and I suppose we all go through this in our careers, times when we're really enjoying it, we're riding this roller coaster and we're really enjoying what's going on, the contribution that we're making. But I also struggled at that point with times where I just really didn't feel connected with what I was doing. And I also had periods in my career where I was working with bosses or leaders who were not inspiring me. And sometimes we learn as much from the people about what not to do as we do from, the people who are great examples of great leadership and how to inspire and empower people. So after the recruitment practice, I then moved on to financial services, which was partly at the time in order to accommodate, I had 2 young children and I wanted to move into something, I wanted to be in something where I could work part-time and also raise my children. So I worked then with a private equity fund manager for quite a lot of years. And all through this part of my career, there were times where I really lost that feeling of making a valuable contribution within an organization and losing that sense of connection to the purpose of the organization. And that left me feeling, unfulfilled. And in some of those organizations as well, not valued for the contribution I was making. And finally, really, I suppose what triggered my transition to something new was this this realization that I had two young children that I was bringing up. And as you do, as we were all told by our parents, if you go to school and you work hard and you do all these things, you know, you can have a fabulous career and you can do whatever you want. You know, the world is your oyster. All of those things that we as parents say to our kids. And I realized that really, what was I saying? I wasn't living that for myself. I was, you know, unhappy. I was frustrated with what I was doing. So it was time to make some changes. And that's actually when I took some coaching myself at that time and started really exploring. And that started with coaching around, will I find another CFO role? You know, am I ready to go back full time? Will I find a new CFO role in an organization more aligned with my values and purpose? But actually it ended up leading me down a different path. As I had coaching and found the power of the conversations, I decided to explore that, seeing it as a personal and professional development opportunity initially, and thinking this will be really valuable if I go into another CFO role and to help me be a better leader of people. But actually, once I started diving into that professional training, I loved it and I became a convert and went, okay, this is what I would love to do, to really empower people to become exceptional leaders, to become people who are authentic and lead with purpose and courage and compassion. And if I can help people do that, you know, that's what fills me up. That's what makes me feel good about what I do in the world.
Yeah, thank you very much to give us a background. So what executive coaching is all about? There's a very buzzword. Even today, I've seen your articles on the LinkedIn. You're talking about the challenges we know being a finance guy, and being a CFO and being a finance professional in today's world. It's a very, very challenging role. You have to keep your different hats in your head. So how do you code it, and how do you feel that when the executive coaching could be very helpful for the financial professionals, the finance leadership in today's world?
So I might start by, with that question around what I see amongst so many of my clients and so many of my network in terms of, and having experienced it myself as a CFO, is that as we climb the ladder in the finance world, in the corporate world generally, we accumulate a huge amount of knowledge and technical expertise, which is all fantastic. But it's very easy as we do that to become isolated and more, trapped in a bit of a bubble where we're trapped by the need to have the answers, to be the technical expert, to be able to deliver. And we find less and less people around us with whom we can share our concerns. I really believe that actually the CFO role can be more isolated than other leadership roles as well sometimes, because of issues around confidentiality, issues around having a peer group who understand some of the aspects of what we do. So I think we can become quite isolated, and our technical training has trained us to be very task focused, very technical and analytical, and we need to open our minds up to being more people focused, more relationship focused. And so the isolation is one issue I really see. Another is that CFOs are under inordinate amounts of pressure to get huge amounts of stuff done. The sheer volume of what people are dealing with, and I think this has really been exacerbated during the last year as well, especially when there was that immediate crisis mode, and every CFO was scurrying around to deliver multiple forecasting and budget scenarios, refinancing, debt, renegotiating customer agreements, supplier agreements, lease agreements. And the pressure was inordinate, I think, higher than it had ever been. And it also pushed them into a more prominent role. So there's that piece about being overwhelmed with sheer volume of stuff, which potentially leads to the stress as well, and how you cope with stress across, which then of course impacts your whole life, outside of work as well as in. many, CFOs, finance leaders, not only is there the volume of work, but they're in a lot of real high stakes situations around solvency, around M&A transactions, renegotiating debt. So the stress from those situations is high, and, all of these things can take their toll.
True.
We can get really sucked down into the weeds of needing to do things, and the pressure to be delivering on many fronts. And the isolation, the stress, and the being overwhelmed also have an impact or have consequences for our ability to influence across the rest of the organization, whether that's other internal stakeholders across the leadership team, across different departments, whether that's across, the full C-suite, whether it's with external investors, shareholders, other stakeholders. And if we're dragged down into the detail and the task focus, we tend to become invisible. And if we become invisible, of course, we're losing our ability to influence or have really positive impact across the organization. So those really, I see, are, four of the big challenges facing finance leaders: the isolation, being overwhelmed with volume, being stressed with high stakes situations, and then that creating this invisibility and lack of influence.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. I can understand very well. Thank you very much for explaining. What I feel that when I realize and notice that when now the role of CFOs and the finance leadership has changed from the technical side to the non-technical side. Because earlier there used to be there are more emphasis of the finance professional on the technical side. Now the situation, the economy, and the conditions across the board, it requires that when you should be maybe more than non-technical side of your skill set is required in the situation. Correct me if I'm wrong, or that's why the executive coaching might be very important for those leaders to face and to equip and to deal with those challenges. Am I right in my statement?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The non-technical aspects have become a much bigger part of the role. The CFO is it's a critical role, and all across finance leadership, the ability to build relationships, to empower and inspire your own team, and to influence stakeholders, to be able to make a difference in the organization. And those are things that are absolutely reliant upon you as an individual building self-awareness, emotional intelligence, building relationships, creating influence, in empowering and inspiring people. And that's a long way from those analytical thought processes.
Yeah. But yeah, can you give us insight about the executive coaching? Because I know that one sometimes it takes 6 months, sometimes it takes 9 months to 1 year. So how does the process work for the sake of my audience? Even though you know that when I'm also a certified executive coach from the Marshall Goldsmith USA, but I would like to hear from you how much or how long it generally take, because in today's world it's very difficult to spare some time, and you're working online, you're working from different part of the world, different zone, and on top of it you wanted to join the executive session. It's a challenging. So what's your feedback on that?
So you're absolutely right, and there's no silver bullet. I think we all have to face it that there is no silver bullet. Making change does take time and energy and commitment. So I usually work with my clients over a period from at least 6 to 12 months, and often beyond. And one of the things that I'm doing in those sessions is executive coaching is about creating this strategic pause, is one way I like to describe it, because it's an opportunity to pause and reflect so that we can work together in terms of finding new ways forward. And I often say it's about slowing down to go faster. So although people say, I can't spare the time, actually, you can't afford to not take the time, because if this enables you to, get that bird's eye view of what's going on, I often say the, analogy I like is that being a leader is no walk in the park. And as a coach, I walk alongside my clients, helping them traverse what is a really bumpy, maybe heavily wooded terrain, by helping them to see new perspectives, navigate obstacles, whether those are internal or external obstacles. And so our sessions provide that time and space where they can reflect, they can get that bird's eye view, see things from new perspectives, and really also start to experiment with new mindsets and behaviors. And one of the things that I do, specifically using some narrative coaching and embodiment practices, is really help them unpack some of the stories that they have been telling themselves. And we all grow up creating our beliefs and assumptions based on our lived experiences and our education and our culture and our gender, and all of those things feed into beliefs and assumptions we have about how the world will work or should work, and challenging those beliefs and assumptions. And it takes time, and it takes effort of both looking internally and taking the big picture view, because it's so easy to get sucked into the doing, the being active, and all of those things.
Yeah. So generally, what's your advice on the professionals or financial professional to what? Because sometimes some people feel that one, and there's also a myth that you are supposed to take executive coaching when you're on a very, very high senior levels, like CFOs. So what's your feedback, or what's your comments on that? Do you think the new or the fresh qualifiers or the middle level financial professional, they should also be showing the interest in the executive coaching? What's your advice on that?
So I strongly believe that coaching can be of value to people at all levels. What I see often is that organizations, well, I was going to say I see that organizations sometimes support those lower levels with different types of training and development opportunities, and those sometimes fall away as you progress. And I do think there is absolutely value in leadership programs and development opportunities in group, and group learning. So one of the reasons I believe that executive coaching becomes so valuable as you get more senior is this opportunity, because you don't have the same collective of people to operate as a sounding board. So I, see my role as being a sounding board, but also holding up a mirror for people to reflect back, and also to help them see their blind spots, and, and then holding them accountable. But coaching, and I believe really that leaders should all be actually learning coaching for to improve their own ability as leaders, so that they are using, not all the time by any means, but so that they are able to use coaching techniques and methodologies with their younger team members as well, which is really about enhancing their own listening skills, enhancing their ability to ask questions, to take a real interest in people, rather than presume to know another person's desires and values and aspirations.
Makes sense. Okay, generally, once you, as a coach, once you engage with your client and all this stuff, you decide, or you pick and choose the areas, or you both agree which are the areas you need to work on, because it's sometimes very difficult from the leader point of view to accept they are, as you rightly mentioned, the blind spots or the area of weakness, because he doesn't feel that one, he doesn't know what he doesn't know. It's a very challenging role to make one understand that one, okay, this is your weakness, this is your blind spot.
Yeah, so that's right. A blind spot, by definition, we can't see it.
Exactly.
So feedback can be enormously helpful. So I do think it is really important that organizations either put things in place to create feedback loops, up and down between levels, across peer groups. I work particularly with a particular feedback tool, leadership assessment, the Leadership Circle, which is around collecting feedback from your peers, your manager, and your direct reports. Not every client wants to, implement an additional tool as well, but that can be enormously helpful. Otherwise, if they're not using a tool like that, I do encourage them to have some of those really open and courageous conversations in terms of asking their peers or their managers or their direct reports for feedback, so that they start to understand how they impact other people. Because the self-awareness work is fantastic, but as you say, the blind spots are there, and also something that may seem innocuous to me can have a huge impact on someone else I'm working with that I'm not aware of, and I'm not aware of that until I seek feedback. So, and if we don't have specific feedback with a client, then I see that as my role. And of course, I don't always see them operating with their team members, so I will not observe all of the behaviors. But if I'm doing my job properly, we will get to some of those issues as we probe further and ask more questions to understand what is driving some of their behaviors and help them see the perspective of other people around them. And that's, that's also my role, is to help them take on those other perspectives, because we all absolutely jump to very quick conclusions about people and what is happening in an organization or in a particular situation. So stopping, reflecting, asking questions about what else might be true, how else might that be different?
Yeah.
What if you were sitting over there? What would that look like? If you were the person at the other end of that phone call, how does that feel? And encouraging people to engage with all of those perspectives and also all of those senses. For me, it's a big piece as well about asking people to connect, move out of the head all the time and back into connecting the mind and body together.
Yep. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Your time, when we talk to you, time flies. We are running short time. And
I do talk a lot.
That's your job. Anyway, thank you very much. It's always good to talk about you and the programs and the stewardship. It's wonderful. And we are very thankful that you join our session and give us audience insights and the feedback regarding coaching and its benefits and importance. Thank you very much. And we will definitely invite you over again. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, thank you very much. My pleasure. Thank you, guys. This was Shu, and I hope you learn a lot about the executive coaching, and we will come back to you with a new session of the new program. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye.